The grand ballroom of the Washington, D.C., Hilton buzzed with sharp laughter and the clink of wine glasses. Chandeliers cast golden light over tables draped in white linen, where powerful people in suits and gowns whispered about laws and deals. Cory Booker, New Jersey's fiery senator, stood near the stage, his jaw tight. Across the room, Pam Bondi, Florida's former attorney general, sipped champagne, her eyes scanning the crowd like a hawk. The gala was meant to raise money for victims of crime, but the air crackled with something darker. Everyone knew Cory and Pam had clashed before, and tonight, old wounds would bleed again. Cory stepped to the podium, his voice booming through the microphone. "Good evening, folks. We're here to help victims, but let's talk truth. Some people in this room block justice with their fancy words and stale ideas. They'd rather lock folks up than lift them up." His eyes locked on Pam, who froze, her glass halfway to her lips. The crowd murmured, sensing a storm. Cory's reform bill, one that would free thousands from unfair prison sentences, had been gutted in committee. Pam, a fierce defender of tough-on-crime laws, had led the charge against it, calling it weak and reckless. Pam set her glass down hard, the clink cutting through the whispers. She strode toward the stage, her heels clicking like gunfire on the marble floor. "You got something to say, Senator?" she snapped, her voice low but venomous. "Don't hide behind that podium. Name names or shut your mouth." The room went silent, every eye on them. Cory's smile was sharp, like a blade. "Oh, I'm naming you, Bondi. You're the one chaining people to cells for profit, not progress." The crowd gasped, but Pam didn't flinch. She climbed the stage steps, her face a mask of fury. "You're a loudmouth with no spine, Booker," she hissed, close enough for only him to hear. "Your bill's a joke, letting criminals walk free to rob and kill again. I stopped it because someone had to." Cory's fists clenched at his sides. "You stopped it because you love power, not justice," he growled. "You're a bully in a dress, and I'm calling you out." Pam's laugh was cold, slicing through the tension. "Call me what you want, but I protect people. You're just a showboat, crying for votes." She turned to the crowd, her voice rising. "This man wants to empty prisons and leave your families defenseless. I say no." A few guests clapped, but others shifted uncomfortably. Cory leaned into the microphone, his words like thunder. "You twist the truth, Pam. My bill helps the innocent, but you'd rather cage them than admit you're wrong." The argument was no longer a debate. It was a brawl, words flying like fists. Guests leaned forward, some shocked, others thrilled, by the raw hostility. A waiter dropped a tray, the crash ignored in the chaos. Cory pointed at Pam, his voice shaking with rage. "You're scared of change, scared of fairness. Step up or step aside." Pam crossed her arms, her smirk cruel. "I'm not scared, Cory. I'm ready to bury your ideas where they belong, in the dirt." As the crowd erupted in cheers and boos, the gala's purpose faded. This was no longer about victims or money. It was Cory versus Pam, two titans tearing into each other with no mercy. The host, a nervous man in a tuxedo, rushed to the stage, begging for calm, but neither listened. Cory's reform, Pam's resistance, and years of bad blood had collided, and no one could look away. The night was young, and the fight was just beginning. The ballroom doors swung open with a bang, and Cory Booker charged into the hotel's grand lobby, his face a storm of fury. Pam Bondi was right behind him, her heels stabbing the polished floor like daggers. The gala crowd spilled out, a mix of shocked donors and eager reporters, their phones flashing as they chased the drama. The lobby, with its towering marble columns and crystal chandeliers, felt like an arena now, the air thick with tension. Cory spun to face Pam, his voice cutting through the chatter. "You think you can dodge this, Bondi? You're a liar, and I'm done letting you hide." Pam's eyes blazed, her hands on her hips. Hide! You're the one running your mouth, Booker, spewing nonsense to look like a hero. She stepped closer, her voice a harsh whisper that carried to the growing crowd. Your reform's a disaster, and you know it. You're too weak to face the truth. The onlookers gasped, some nodding, others shaking their heads. A news camera zoomed in, catching every word. Cory's laugh was bitter, his finger jabbing the air. Weak? You're the one who sold out justice years ago, Pam. Don't think I forgot. The accusation hit like a thunderbolt. Pam's face tightened, but she didn't back down. You're digging up old dirt now? She snarled, her voice dripping with scorn. You're pathetic, dragging up the past because you can't win. Today, the crowd buzzed, sensing a secret. Years ago, Cory and Pam had worked on a task force to fix prison overcrowding. Cory pushed for mercy, Pam for punishment, but Pam had leaked their plans to a rival group, killing the deal and humiliating Cory. He'd never forgiven her, and now the wound was raw. You betrayed me, Pam, Cory roared, his voice echoing off the marble walls. You stabbed me in the back to climb your little ladder, and now you're doing it again. The reporters scribbled furiously, their pens scratching like insects. Pam's smile was icy, her words sharp as glass. Betrayed you? I saved that project from your soft-hearted stupidity. You'd have let killers roam free, and I stopped. You! She turned to the crowd, her arms wide. This man's dangerous, folks. He cares more about his image than your safety. Cory's fists shook, but he kept his ground. You're a fraud, Bondi, he spat. You twist everything. To scare people, but I see through you. You're not tough. You're terrified of losing control. The crowd parted as a security guard approached, his face nervous. Please, take this outside, he stammered, but Pam waved him off like a fly. We're fine right here, she snapped, her eyes locked on Cory. Unless you're scared. To keep going, Senator? Scared? Cory barked, stepping so close their shadows merged. I'm just getting started. You want to talk tough? Let's talk about how you profit from private prisons, keeping people locked up for cash. The crowd exploded, some cheering, others booing. A woman in a pearl necklace clutched her purse, whispering to her husband. Pam's face flushed, but her voice stayed steady. That's a lie, and you know it, you cheap shot. I fight for victims, not money. You're the one chasing headlines. The lobby was chaos now, voices overlapping, cameras flashing. A reporter shouted a question, but Cory and Pam ignored her, their eyes burning into each other. The betrayal from years ago hung between them, fueling every word. Cory's reform was his chance to fix the system, but Pam's resistance was personal, a chance to crush him again. Neither would yield, and the crowd knew it. As the argument raged, the stakes grew higher, the truth twisting under their anger. The night was far from over, and the fight was about to get uglier. The hotel's courtyard was a quiet oasis, with stone fountains bubbling under strings of soft lights. But as Cory Booker and Pam Bondi burst through the glass doors, the peace shattered like dropped crystal. The crowd from the lobby followed, a swarm of suits, dresses, and flashing cameras, their murmurs rising like a tide. Cory's tie was loose, his eyes wild with fury. Pam's face was a mask of defiance, her lips curled in a sneer. The cool night air did nothing to calm them, it only sharpened their words. You're a hypocrite, Bondi, Cory bellowed, his voice bouncing off the stone walls. You talk about victims, but you've never cared about anyone but yourself, Pam. Spun toward him, her heels grinding into the gravel path. Don't lecture me, Booker, she shot back, her voice a whip. You're the one playing saint while the rest of us clean up your mess. The crowd formed a loose circle, phones raised, capturing every snarl. A fountain splash was the only other sound as Cory stepped closer, his finger stabbing the air. Clean up? You're the one who broke a man's life to win points, and I was there. The words landed like a punch, and Pam's eyes flickered just for a moment. He was talking about Marcus, a young man they'd both met on that old task force. Marcus had been jailed for a crime he didn't commit, and Cory fought to free him. Pam, eager to look tough, had pushed for harsher penalties, ignoring Marcus's pleas. When Cory got him released, Pam took credit in the press, leaving Cory to swallow his rage. Now he flung the story at her like a weapon. "You used Marcus's pain to shine your badge," Cory growled. "You stepped on his neck to climb, and you do it again." Pam's laugh was sharp, like breaking glass. "You're still whining about Marcus?" she mocked, her arms crossed tight. "I did my job, Booker. You're the one who turned it into a circus, parading him for your votes." The crowd gasped, some whispering Marcus's name. A reporter shoved forward, shouting, "Is this true, Ms. Bondi?" Pam ignored him, her eyes locked on Cory. "You're soft, Cory. Always have been. You cry for one man while I protect thousands." "Protect?" Cory roared, his voice shaking the leaves above. "You protect your own skin. I've got proof, Pam. Letters you wrote to block Marcus's release, all to keep your tough image." The crowd erupted, voices clashing like cymbals. Pam's face paled, but she recovered fast, her voice venomous. "Letters? You're making that up, you desperate fool. You've got nothing but hot air." But her hands twitched, betraying her nerves. Cory smirked, sensing weakness. "Oh, I've got them, Bondi. And I'll show the world how low you sink." The courtyard was a cauldron now, the crowd's shouts drowning the fountains. An older man in a suit yelled, "Show the letters," while a woman in pearls hissed, "She's lying." Pam stepped forward, her voice a low growl. "You want to play dirty, Cory? I've got stories, too, like how you fumbled that task force, letting real criminals slip through." She turned to the crowd, her eyes blazing. "This man's reforms are a gift to thieves and worse. You want that on your streets?" Cory's chest heaved, his words like fire. "You're scared, Pam. Scared the truth's coming out. Those letters will bury you." The crowd pressed closer, the air electric with their clash. Reporters scribbled, cameras rolled, and the courtyard felt like it might explode. Pam and Cory stood inches apart, their past and present colliding in a storm of rage. Marcus's story, the letters and their old betrayal fueled every word, and neither would back down. The fight was spiraling, and the truth was clawing its way out. The hotel's press room was a cramped, buzzing hive, its walls lined with posters from past events. Cory Booker stormed in, a folder clutched in his hand, his face carved with determination. Pam Bondi followed, her eyes like steel, ignoring the reporters shoving microphones in her path. The courtyard crowd had trailed them, squeezing into the room, their whispers loud as wind. Overhead lights glared, making the space feel like a courtroom. Cory slammed the folder on a wooden table, his voice a blade. "You're finished, Bondi. These letters prove you blocked Marcus's freedom for your own glory." Pam's laugh was a hiss, her hands planted on the table. "You're bluffing, Booker, you sad little man. Show me or crawl back to your soapbox." The crowd leaned in, breathless. Cory flipped open the folder, pulling out yellowed pages, their edges worn. "Right here," he snarled, holding them up. "Your words, Pam, telling the board to keep Marcus locked up, calling him a risk to save your image." Reporters gasped, cameras clicking like locusts. A woman in the back shouted, "Read them!" Cory's eyes never left Pam's. "You happy to lie now?" Pam's face twitched, but she didn't crumble. She leaned forward, her voice low and vicious. "You think you're clever, Cory? Those letters were about protecting people, not me. You're the one who messed up Marcus's case, pushing for his release before the evidence was clear." The crowd stirred, confused. Pam turned to them, her voice rising. "This man rushed to free a suspect, risking lives for his big moment. I stopped him and I'd do it again." Cory's jaw dropped, his voice a roar. "You're twisting it, you snake. I fought for Marcus because he was innocent, and you knew it." He waved the letters, his hands shaking. These show you cared more about your career than a man's life. The room was a furnace, voices clashing, reporters shouting questions. A man in a gray suit yelled, "She's dodging," while another hissed, "Booker's grandstanding." Pam smirked, unfazed. "Keep waving your papers, Cory. You're the one who nearly let a killer walk free." Then Pam reached into her purse, pulling out a single sheet of paper, her eyes glinting. "You want truth?" she snapped, slapping it on the table. "This is your email, Booker, from the task force, begging me to rush Marcus's release without a full review. You called it urgent for your campaign." The crowd exploded, some booing Cory, others cheering Pam. Cory's face burned, his voice a growl. "That's a lie, and you forged it. I never wrote that." "You're desperate, Cory," Pam shot back, her words like acid. "You pushed too fast, and I cleaned up your mistake. Now you're whining because I outsmarted you." The reporters surged forward, microphones waving, one shouting, "Senator, is the email real?" Cory ignored them, his eyes locked on Pam. "You're a fraud, Bondi, digging up fake dirt to save your skin. Those letters are real, and they'll ruin you." The press room was chaos, the air thick with rage and doubt. The letters and email lay on the table, two weapons in a war of truth. The crowd's shouts echoed, some demanding proof, others picking sides. Cory and Pam stood like boxers, battered but unyielding, their past mistakes and present fury colliding. The letters had shaken Pam, but her counterattack had rocked Cory, and the room felt ready to burst. Every word was a spark, and the fire was roaring toward its peak. The courtyard glowed under the soft lights, its fountains whispering as Cory Booker and Pam Bondi stormed back through the hotel's glass doors. The crowd, now a restless sea of faces, surged behind them, reporters and gala guests elbowing for space. The night air was sharp, but the heat of their feud burned hotter. Cory clutched his folder of letters, his eyes fierce. Pam held her single sheet, the alleged email, her face a fortress of defiance. The table from the press room had been dragged outside, a makeshift stage for their final clash. Cory's voice thundered, "You're done, Bondi. Your lies end here, and the truth's coming out." Pam's sneer was venomous, her words slicing the air. "Truth? You're a fraud, Booker, waving fake letters to hide your failures." She waved her paper, turning to the crowd. "This email shows he rushed Marcus's case for votes, not justice." Boos and cheers clashed, the crowd split. A reporter, her notepad trembling, shouted, "Prove it, both of you!" Cory slammed his folder down, the sound like a gavel. "These letters," he growled, "are real, signed by you, Pam, blocking Marcus's freedom to look tough." "Deny it now." Pam's eyes narrowed, but her voice stayed steady. "You're pathetic, Cory, clinging to old scraps. That email's your signature, begging for a quick win." The crowd roared, some chanting Cory's name, others Pam's. Then a new figure pushed forward, an older man in a worn suit, his face familiar to some. It was Marcus himself, his eyes heavy with years of pain. The crowd hushed, stunned. Cory froze, and Pam's smirk faltered. Marcus raised a shaky hand, his voice clear. "I know the truth, and I'm here to say it. You used me, Ms. Bondi," Marcus said, staring at Pam. "I was innocent, and you kept me locked up to win points. Those letters are real. I saw them back then." The crowd gasped, phones tilting to capture him. Pam's face drained of color, her voice a hiss. "You're lying, Marcus, bought by Booker's promises." But Marcus shook his head, turning to Cory. "And you, Senator, you fought for me, but you didn't check every fact. That email's fake, though. I know your heart was right." Cory's chest heaved, relief mixing with rage. "You hear that, Pam?" he bellowed. "Marcus knows. Your lies, your forged emails trash, and your career's next." The crowd erupted, clapping for Marcus, some shouting Pam down. A reporter thrust a microphone at Pam, yelling, "Is it true?" Pam's hands shook, but she snapped, "This is a setup, you fools. Booker planned this." Her words were desperate, drowned by the crowd's jeers. Cory stepped forward, his voice softer but fierce. "You underestimated us, Pam. Me, Marcus, these people. They see you now. Your lies locked up lives, but truth's free tonight." He held up the letters, then handed them to a reporter who nodded grimly. The crowd cheered louder, some hugging Marcus, others glaring at Pam. She stood alone, her paper crumpling in, her fist. "You'll regret this, Cory," she muttered, but her voice was weak, lost in the noise. The courtyard pulsed with victory, the fountains sparkling like applause. Marcus stood tall, his pain eased by truth. Cory met his eyes, nodding, with respect. The crowd chanted for justice, their voices a wave that lifted Cory and crushed Pam's defiance. Reporters rushed to file stories, the letters now evidence of Pam's deceit. She turned, her heels clicking as she fled into the hotel, the crowd's boos chasing her. Cory raised a hand, not for cheers, but for quiet. "This is for Marcus," he said. "For justice." The night ended with truth shining, a triumph no one would forget.